Shamangelic Healing podcast is designed as a platform to share authentic conversations about real life issues, providing you with valuable resources and tools to support you in shining your most authentic self, creating a thriving life that you absolutely love, and to support you in manifesting your soul's mission. Welcome to the Shamangelic Healing podcast with your host, Anahata Ananda. And I'm so excited to share this beautiful soul sister guest. Bridget Nielsen is a phenomenal, motivational, inspirational, fierce, fabulous female that is making a big splash on her YouTube channel. So check that out. And that's why I really wanted to have her on the show today, because we're diving into the spiritual path and the spiritual awakening and the benefits and the challenges of that journey and that process. And she is one of those that I feel is really walking it. There's a lot of people talking it. And what I notice in her is she really has my admiration, because this is somebody who I feel is actually embodying it. So I'm excited to have her on the show and share some of our real raw experiences about the challenges and the benefits of our spiritual awakening process. So I hope you enjoy this. Please like it and share it if you find something valuable, and let's dive in. Welcome to the Shamangelic Healing podcast with your hostess, Anahata Ananda, and my dear soul sister, beautiful, radiant, angelic presence, Bridget Nielsen. And today we're gonna really have so much fun exploring the spiritual path and the challenges and the benefits of spiritual awakening and how to support you going through it. And you've been through it, I've been through it, you're still going through it, I'm still going through it.
Yes, it doesn't end.
Let's help people that are going through it.
Yes.
And with the real anecdotes, and the reason why I really thought you were perfect for this content, because you're walking it.
Yeah.
A lot of people are just talking it. And we've got a lot of that, and you know where you're walking it sometimes and not totally. Where you're talking it, not walking it, and I know where I'm doing that, and that's part of the authentic, transparent experience of the journey.
Yes.
And so I completely admire and respect you as a sister that is shining on purpose, on path, as a spiritual being that is authentically shining. That's how I see you, sister. And
I
know, right? And I know, because I love you so dearly, I knew the people listening and the people viewing would just love you as well and feel your truth and your transmission on this topic.
Thank you.
So she lives in Sedona, and an amazing priestess, and we'll talk even more about what you bring.
Yeah.
But welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love this, that you're doing this. It's so great that you have this platform and people get to be a part of your vivacious energy.
Right. Yes. Likewise. And you're all over YouTube doing amazing things, and there's this synergy between us of where we're coming out, courageously, boldly being seen, and that's scary and exciting and on path and on purpose. And so I want to acknowledge you for doing that.
Thank you.
So enough tooting each other's horns now. Let's talk about, let's dive into, what is it for you? How would you describe the process of, what is the spiritual path? And how do you know you're on it, or that spiritual awakening process, and what defines that for you?
Yeah. Well, I would say it's completely distinct. So it's something that is a complete paradigm difference. You were this before and you're this now. It could look different to other people, but for me, it was the full spirit connection, it's spiritual path. So it's the full communion with spirit coming alive within me, that awakening. So that connection, for me, that's what it was. It was very intimate and personal. What was it like for you?
Well, I think the spiritual path can be an epiphany, an aha, and it can also be kind of a slow unraveling. Yeah. And the catalyst, I think, for it can be very different for people that are listening. I think for me, the catalyst was a life that was disconnected from my soul, who I was authentically, and not having a connection to the divine, a higher power, my higher self, whatever you call that.
Yes.
I was not really raised religiously, and so except my dad was very passionate about speaking the Lord's name in vain. There was a lot of God damn it.
Right. No, so he was saying
kind of,
God.
you know, he was a very spiritual man. You know, and my grandmother was, you know, and grandfather were very Catholic, and so when we went to their house, there was prayer and God and the Bible and crucifixes, and so I had this exposure to different ways of looking at it. My dad was an atheist, my grandparents Catholic, and so I think for me there was kind of a void of like, none of this actually fits me, and so I kind of went without. I didn't seek out that initially because it didn't fit the way it was presented to me vibrationally. It didn't fit me.
Absolutely.
And then when I went as a kid to like summer Christian camp,
Yeah.
you know, there was something that touched me about reaching to a higher source for ethics and a guiding way of being that I was missing in my life at the time. And so I think that was when I first started opening to it actually feeling right for me.
Right.
Is that going to a higher power or higher knowledge, and that in that time it was Christianity.
Yeah.
And as I dove into that, then I started seeing the disparities of things that didn't fit me.
Yes.
You know, and I started saying, wait a second, you know, thou shalt not kill. I get with that. Like, I think generally that's a pretty good one to live by.
Yes.
And then I started reading different scriptures about, and we pray for a successful slaughter in thy name, O Lord. And I was like, hey, this doesn't resonate. A big part of my core truth doesn't resonate with that. And so as much as I found a deep camaraderie and a nourishing part of my soul to go to a higher power, I also found that in certain scriptures, I didn't find it to be true for me.
Yeah.
And so then I let go of that and kind of went untethered for a long time.
Yeah.
And it took some big core life events for me to actually catalyze into a version that actually fit me. And I searched all kinds of places for that. So really navigating untethered for a long time was really lonely and uncomfortable and an uncomfortable place. And what was that for you? What was that like for you when you were growing up?
It was actually very similar in a way. And I know for me, it was that disconnection from hearing, you know, being in a very dogmatic, you know, kind of community. It was, why am I bad? Like, I was inherently like a sinful little girl. And I'm like, I hadn't done anything.
You're like, I'm pretty good, I think.
I'm actually like a pretty good kid. And like, so how am I, you know, not right in this? And so it was those kind of, I guess, like judgments that I could feel imposed on me.
Guilt.
That guilt, the shame, like all those kinds of energies. And I was like, well, this doesn't really feel good. And like you said, where could this fit? And that resonance or the spirit, I couldn't feel the spirit in it.
Yeah.
And I got more of that from nature. Nature was my refuge.
Yeah.
Like I could commune there. But as far as how to fit in culturally or to have like a supportive community around spirit, it didn't exist. And so I was, this lone wolf that was just odd and kind of this little satanic girl that didn't do anything necessarily.
Did you conform at that time when you were little and you were invited to be involved in, say, more of a dogmatic spiritual culture?
Yeah.
Did you kind of try to fit in, or did you just go, no, I'm going to go do my own thing?
I rebelled.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I bet that was popular.
Right. Well, it was funny because I still didn't do anything bad. I was actually following all their principles, but I knew that I wasn't, saved or whatnot. And so then at that space, I was like, well, what are the two options? And it's kind of like the virgin or the whore.
Yeah.
Or like, so I'm like, I guess I'm just bad, even though I hadn't done anything.
Right.
So I kind of just sat with that, but also then had to go kind of deeper into myself and go, okay, well, I love me, even though there's not a reflection in the world that's going to embrace that.
Well, that it feels like that has a direct rub against that value and self-worth when everybody around is saying you're not doing it right, you don't fit in, and somewhere in the subtle consciousness, I imagine that I'm not enough starts to begin to ring true.
Yes, and then that overcompensation happened for me, where it's like, well, if I achieve in these different categories that are culturally acceptable, maybe not in the religious category, but in the life category, then at least I'll be liked for that.
Right.
So then that achievement, and you going into the corporate world too, right?
Yes.
Where it's like, okay, well, if I can achieve in the corporate world and make it up that ladder, then I will be accepted on that level at least. Right. And so it actually sent me deeper into, I guess the matrix, if you want to call it, or the mainstream, to try and get some validation. So I like that. I like what you're saying about that, because it sent me deeper. What did it do for you as you moved on in your kind of like life path?
It's interesting because I didn't conform, and that I was open, what was really cool is that I wasn't imposed to be Catholic. I did have a wonderful relative that was sending the daily word all the time, and my dad would get it in the mail. He's like, "Oh, God damn this stupid shit," and throw it in the trash. And at a time when I felt really disconnected from some kind of spiritual anchor, and was really alone, and everything around me was pretty dark, and this was around like 11, 12. To me, that was the dark night, because I was looking around at all the adults, and I was like, no one here. I'm like, I don't like, this is not right here. Something's not right. Like I'm looking ahead. You start to evolve out of being in the hidden fantasy world of being, 7, 8, 9, 10. And at 11, 12, I started awakening and realizing, oh, so this is what it is to be adult. You lie, you cheat, you sedate, you blame, and I was kind of disenchanted and felt really disconnected because I wasn't feeling role models in my life that I respected, actually. Which was a scary, dark, and lonely place for me, being untethered from even my own version of spiritual. I couldn't find it yet, and what was the options were not it for me at that time. And I remember that was like, well, might as well just fit in with the rebellion crowd. I started drinking. I started smoking pot at 12.
Wow.
Which I don't really, it's not, I've never said that before.
I hadn't heard that before. This is getting interesting.
This podcast is going to really take all of the skeletons out of closets. So you know what?
That's
whatever.
what it's about.
And so, I started sedating and hiding and conforming, not religiously or spiritually, but hiding my light, dimming it down, and saying, well, if this is the matrix, if this is how you do it, let me get started.
Right.
So I started that process, and it felt so not right. So pretty quickly I realized smoking isn't it, and actually realized drinking wasn't it. Pretty young, I kind of had that wake up beforehand, and then got into, I said around that time, I pulled out one of the little daily word out of the trash my dad had thrown in the trash, and I pulled it out of the trash, and I started looking at it, and there was a passage in there saying, no deep darkness in the world can overcome the light. A single candle flame will burn against the darkest night. Let all the world of darkness come, resentments, envies, and fears, and light the single flame of love, and the darkness disappears. And that passage for me was a lifesaver. It gave me hope. It was a beacon. I didn't really understand it completely. I just knew that there was a light. There was something to reach for, that I could face fears and darkness, because I was feeling that very alone. And it gave me a hope, a light, that I was that flame. And I think that started my journey, and that's where I kind of started into the Christianity route and summer camp. That was my safe haven for those couple of years of just getting through my early teen years. And then I started, identifying for me personally, where I thought there were some disparities that didn't align. and had to take a step back from that.
Yes.
So I think early on, that's how it showed up for me. And then I realized, not from any religious place, but just from my own authentic or spiritual place, I realized that I don't want to hide my light. And so even through all of my high school years, I wasn't drinking or sedating or any of that. And I had kind of already gone through that, and all of my peers were starting to drink and sedate. And I'm like, I'm over it.
Yep.
And that was to find myself in that. Nature definitely was one of those places that I felt at home for sure. So, but I want to recognize that part where both of us kind of felt alone.
Yes.
And untethered for a while.
Yes.
How did you find your way back?
Yeah, so it continued to catalyze where I went deeper into achieving, and I went into the corporate world and was in Los Angeles and kind of went deep into that paradigm, because the spirit thing, like, I hadn't seen a version of it that resonated.
Right.
And so over time and different relationships and stuff, it just finally wasn't working. Like, my body, my soul was dead.
How did that show up? What were the signals of your soul being dead? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, literally, my dad looked at me and he was like, "You're gone." Like, I was hollow.
Yeah.
Right? Where it was like I had just become this mechanism towards creating achievement or doing something the way that people think I should be doing it. And so it was just this hollowness where I had lost the spark. I had lost my light. Right. Like that.
I can't imagine you in that place.
I know. And when he said that, because I knew that
your dad saw you.
Yeah.
I know your dad.
And when he said that, that reflection it hit me really hard. Okay. I have to really change this. And luckily I was then in Los Angeles, and it was the height, right before, a few years before 2012, and there was, channelers and shamans, and it was right before that.
Yoga, meditation, all of it's right there.
Yes. And so that culture, I had something instantly to go towards that even actually my parents had already started getting into. So at that point, I was kind of like, this woo this stuff, and I resisted it for a while, but finally I was just at a breaking point. Yeah. And with that light gone, I went deep into different kind of modalities and had different kinds of teachers that truly, I felt it. Finally, my empathic senses and my extrasensory perceptions could be satisfied with resonating and feeling like the mystery and
feel
spirit.
Good?
It was the best. Finally, that part of me that was this very 5-year-old had a place, and so that was the thing that then ushered, and it just coaxed that flame back in me to come alive again.
It's when you come home to that, it feels so good because it's so different than the other things. You're feeling hollow, empty, sedated, depressed, or really just inauthentic. For continuing along that same thing, it's very similar.
Yeah.
Just dove in without an anchor to that. Then you just kind of follow the masses into, I'm going to dive into career, I'm going to dive into making money, I'm going to dive into materialism, and also achieving acknowledgement through success and accolades that are exterior motivated and created from the outside, and saw it from that place, and got to a point where my health was failing, and even though I have everything on paper, married, 2 kids, successful career, and just feeling like this is a trap. This is not me. I'm following all of the steps, but the steps don't fit me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody listening has ever felt that, or anybody watching has ever felt that you did everything right, but it's somebody else's story.
Yes. The meaning, the fulfillment is not there, even though it should be.
It should be.
That's
doing
what we're
it right.
taught. That's what we're told.
Right?
Yes.
So that's where I hit a wall, where the emptiness was so great, and I didn't really have the tools, because I wasn't navigating with any divine guidance. I wasn't navigating with my soul making the choices. It was whatever step is next, whatever I'm supposed to do, And it was a very empty place. And of course, from that empty place, then we're going to have relationship conflict. There's going to be a lot more sedating, health problems, irritability, anger, resentment, you name it.
Yeah.
Kind of felt it. That's where I was getting a diagnosis was a big wake up call for me. I was diagnosed with some thyroid problems at the time. That was a wake up call for me. And my marriage was really challenged at the time because I wasn't in a place to be my best self. And a lot of the pressures of being a mother of twins at the time, like anything that isn't working gets accelerated when you add pressure to it.
Yes.
And so the challenges of raising two at a time.
Oh boy. You've done such a good job.
You know my kids.
I love them. You've done such a great job.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, you've met.
Yes.
Yeah. And so also I was realizing that I wasn't the person that I wanted to be as a mother. And that I wasn't showing up as I knew was possible as a partner.
Yes.
And I wasn't respecting the person I was becoming.
Yes.
And so
then what did you do? Like what was that next step, between like the realization and then that next insight or movement?
I think that I didn't realize it was happening, so I went along with everybody else and sedated, ignored. So how I sedated was with food, how I sedated was with shopping, how I sedated was with just being busy, with diving into caregiving, ignoring it and taking care of everybody else at the expense of self, pretending like there wasn't a problem in my marriage, know. So I think I just did like most everybody, like mainstream does, like oh, not a problem. This is just how life is.
Right.
But at a soul level, I knew that wasn't true. And some different things occurred in my life at that time, where the catalyst for change was what I call a marital liberation. Was one of the pieces that really needed to shift for both my husband and I at the time, because it isn't about blame. It's about, wait, we really don't have the tools, and we weren't really ready to do the work, and the way we were treating each other wasn't really respectful and harmonious. And so at that point, the catalyst for me was choosing a marital liberation, because I knew that was going to be the right choice. And I had to face all of that underlying Catholic guilt and shame, like, you don't divorce.
I like what you said. You said liberation.
I had to reframe it.
And I love that so much, because that was exactly what I was thinking, is like, you can't get divorced. All the guilt, shame, all those things that...
Well, and also the other part of that, Bridget, that I had to really face was my devotion and commitment to the family unit.
Yeah.
That was also keeping me from growing as a soul, and keeping me from being honest about the dynamic that my husband and I were in at the time was not healthy for either of us.
Yes.
And that we didn't really have the tools how to navigate it. And it was getting worse, and the counseling that we sought out was woefully short of what we actually needed to turn it around.
Yes.
And I think at a soul level, neither of us was ready to do that. And it took the loving act of liberating each other from that container, that in that process, you don't realize that you're liberating and you're freeing each other. You're like, going from, you really upset and hurt and wounded. And I also had to grieve the loss of the family unit.
Yes.
And all of that catalyzed a deep core healing. And that's where going into the healing of the pain, not just from the marriage, but what had happened way, way before that got never healed, that I brought into our marriage.
That iceberg.
Oh yeah.
The elephant.
Oh my God.
You create that space, right? That break happens, and then all of that is just revealed. And I think it's just insane.
So much. Because what we, in our counseling, what we were talking about was the tip of the iceberg. And that's exactly the term that I used. I was like, this is not like, it's under here.
Yeah.
What is under the deep, like, ocean in my being is not getting addressed, and it is affecting this relationship, and all of that what is underneath inside him is not getting addressed.
Absolutely.
And how that's affecting our relationship dynamic is not getting addressed. And so at that time, different circumstances, I was like, okay, I'm choosing marital liberation, which I had to really face that. And it woke up all of the pain. And this is the spiritual path now.
Yeah.
Now we're on the spiritual path because now I have to face the truth.
And you've shifted. You're looking at it and you've made like a paradigm shift from covering up
Right.
to like looking under.
Right. Because I had given up alcohol at the time, so I couldn't sedate any longer.
Yes.
So I haven't had that was how many almost 2 decades ago where I'm like, I'm not sedating anymore what I feel.
Yes.
And so I couldn't go to alcohol. And I was like, okay. I went into the shamanic arts because I wanted somebody that could go in and get under the iceberg.
Yes.
And like go down into, and that's what really drew me. My spiritual path was that catalyst of all this pain that I hadn't dealt with. And so the courage to go there, that was my choice, is to kind of take the shamanic approach to let's unearth it, let's look at it. And I went deep.
Yes.
And it was scary and beautiful and so much stuff in there that was keeping me from seeing my beautiful, like you said, that like inner little fairy, beautiful, bright light that I used to be that had gotten pretty dim.
Yes.
And then that quote came up again. No deep darkness in the world can overcome the light. A single candle flame will burn against the darkest night. Let all the world of darkness come, resentment, envy, and fear, and light the single flame of love, and the darkness disappears. And 20 years after first reading that is when I was going through my marital liberation. 20 years later, I found that quote again, and I was like, okay, I'm going somewhere.
Those
and
echoes.
I know, I'm going towards the light. I'm going towards the light. And that propelled me into going after the darkness that was obscuring my light. And then it was, well, then let's go find the light of the version. And I went into yoga, I went into meditation, and all kinds of different nature and ceremony and shamanism and like all these different, like Buddhism. And I just was like, I am open to hungry to be like, ooh, let's try that. And but not this and more of that. And I was like a hungry caterpillar and just eating it up because I knew I was creating a new set of wings. Yeah. And that felt so good and so different. But I had to go in and go into that dark place to move out what was false, what was pain, what was not me, and deal with it, to allow the light to have a space.
And I think that's what happens, right? Is what we're talking about, this in-between space is like the dark night of the soul, right? It's like the shadow work. Yeah. And it seems like it's just this endless void.
Abyss.
But at the end of it is your light.
Oh my God.
You know?
So good.
And that's the beginning flame of like this reconnection with spirit and your soul.
The spark.
Yes.
Yes. This is where, for those of you that are going through your dark night, hitting rock bottom, or feeling like it's a tunnel and there's no way out, let us tell you there is a way out.
Yes.
And
that is the way out.
That is the way out, is through.
Yeah.
And to face it. And you're not alone. There's resources, there's support.
Yes.
And so I think there's this individuation process that happens of like when you have the journey of having to individuate from that which isn't you or doesn't fit.
Yes.
And how was that for you, that individuation where
it's
what came up for you? Because everyone has to go through that process of separating from the unity, or the community, to find your own rhythm and then come back to the community with your own rhythm.
Absolutely.
And not seeking the community to validate.
It can no longer validate.
You can't do it.
Because it's meant to invalidate that specific meaning that you've just found, your soul, right? For me, it was me taking the leap of faith. It's funny that these kind of like religious mythos, I mean, because they have a core resonance to it. So it makes sense that they still underlie even like New Age or like modern spirituality. Yeah. But it was me taking the leap of faith and quitting my corporate job and having like nothing, right? It's like taking that step, leaving a like a really long-term relationship that wasn't healthy, and just kind of like taking that step. I don't know how I'm going to be supported. I don't know like what I'm going to do, but just eradicating and leaving everything behind, and then just knowing that it will catch me, knowing that I will catch me and spirit will catch me. And it did. And I just went and dove into all of this even more and began to actually like thrive. And in that space, then this individuation, I broke from the mainstream, and then I kind of looked back at it with negativity and resentment, which happens because we have to kind of say no. It's like it's a rebellious teenager saying like no to the parent because it needs to become different.
Its own self. Yeah.
Yeah. How was it for you, individuation?
I love this part where you're like, okay, you have to like kind of get mad at where you've come from sometimes, be like, I'm not that, and I'm angry at you, and I'm going to be myself. And we kind of do that from like a little 3-year-old tantrum or a rebellious teen. And it's not uncommon in the spiritual awakening process to dip into overcompensating into what is termed sometimes spiritual elitism, that now I'm awake, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, this is gross, and and it's true. And I want to share how both of us dipped into that.
Yes.
Of like, oh, well, that individuation can also, the ego can trap us into that separation consciousness that I'm better or more evolved now that I'm awake.
Yes.
And I'm just going to cut out those people or those family members that are less evolved or asleep or just don't get me, and they just don't get it. And I fell into that trap.
What happened for you?
Oh, God. Gee, thanks for asking, Bridget.
I'm curious.
It's coming back to you. So,
okay, great.
This is the Radical Truth podcast, by the way.
Definitely.
And I think for me, I was all about, at that time, I just dove into, I'm clean, like a clean diet. I was 100% raw food. I was into yoga. I was into meditation daily. And I got to this point with being so like, and I use my claws, my hands, so attached to that identity that I started judging people that weren't in alignment with it.
Yes.
Kind of like an angry vegan.
Yes.
That doesn't help the cause at all by getting angry at people that are, you know, not choosing the same lifestyle.
Yes.
And I remember at Thanksgiving, after I had been all like awakened and righteous and clean with my diet, and I'm not drinking, I'm not smoking, I'm not putting anything sugar, and I just totally raw, organic, plant-based everything, and I'm meditating every day and green juice every day, and like, aren't I fabulous? And I'm going to take that to Thanksgiving where nobody's changed.
Right.
And everybody's indulging in a turkey, and everybody's like overeating and drinking, and I think that was the most uncomfortable Thanksgiving, not for me, but for everybody on the receiving end of me.
Yeah.
Because I was so righteous, I was so on my soapbox, I was in such judgment.
Yes.
About how many portions my dad was putting on his plate, how much my aunt was drinking, how much this person was, how they were behaving, what they were saying at the table, that I was so righteous and full of myself that I was serving everybody judgment. Oh, you're having a second heaping of portion of that, let me add my judgment to it.
Yes.
Which is the most toxic thing at
Yes.
the table.
Yes.
It's not the wine.
Yeah.
It's not the turkey. It's not the extra piece of pie that's the most toxic to anyone's soul. It's the judgment that was coming from me. And here I was thinking I was being so righteous and I had my shit together. And it took me a while to figure out I'm the poison here at this meal. I'm the most toxic dish here. And my heart was so closed and I was so elevated and full of myself that it was, and nobody can digest that.
Yeah.
Because it's hurtful and it's mean, and I couldn't get along with anybody because I was in such judgment. It kept my heart closed. And so even though I brought my kale salad and I brought my whatever tofurkey or whatever it was, whatever I was having in place of a traditional meal, that I'm sure that I had trouble digesting that even though it was clean.
Yes.
Because I was so emotionally angry and cold that it left everybody else feeling that too, I'm sure.
Yes.
So there's that truth.
Woo! It's so good, but And it makes sense, like, if we look at what we were just saying from the beginning, is that we have this iceberg of 90% of everything that we experienced for decades just sitting there, and by the time we break free, it's still, that energy is still eruptive,
right.
And like, it has to be washed away and understood. And I mean, I had the same experience, the differentiation between like the muggles, right? And as if to people that are awake, like that's not
Harry
offensive.
Potter reference.
Yes, yeah, where it's like they're asleep, they're muggles, and I'm awake. And it's funny that we can like even have this concept, because in spirituality we have that we are all one.
Unity, consciousness.
And that we're a reflection of each other. So I think it's always funny how and it's always at the beginning of awakening.
Right. Well, you're soapboxing.
Yeah. Yes, that we just forget those ones. Let's just forget those ones. We need to make sure to be vegan and meditate, but the oneness and the other stuff isn't working right now, because I need to be in judgment. And I definitely fell into that and judged my family, judged my pretty much everyone that wasn't that, right? And telling even my mom to her face, like, we're not going to be, in the same reality, the same timeline. You're not going to make it.
Bye-bye. You're not going to make it.
Yeah.
Like, listen to the point. Like, woo, that's quite a spell to cast.
I know. And I kind of, like, felt it at the time, but it was, like, I was like, she's not, And it was the exact same judgment and, spell that was cast on me when I was little. It's like, you're not saved.
You're not saved.
Sorry.
Isn't that
It's so ironic.
Oh,
and
you realize, oh wait, I'm doing the thing of the thing that I said that they're wrong for.
Yeah.
That's another level of awakening when we catch ourselves in that.
That's
juicy.
It's really deep and very, very
Ouchie.
humbling.
Ooh.
Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate your honesty in that, because that's that disparity is where another level of the spiritual path comes in, is where we start to realize, wow, when I move into separation consciousness about anything, whether it's about sexuality, whether it's about spirituality, whether it's about my diet or my lifestyle or whatever, or I don't have that anymore, and oh, you still take that substance, or you still do that.
Yep.
Anytime we're still working in that place, we know there's still more work to do.
Yes.
And that's the irony, is that the judgment that we're so opposed to, that's to me what is another layer of the spiritual work and the inner work. And required for the spiritual path is to meet that righteousness and that judgment and that criticism, and to meet it with compassion. Because that's where the forgiveness is, for where I'm still awake, and for my blind spots that continue to exist that I don't quite see or know yet. They're there. Yeah. And it also helps me to come to compassion and forgiveness for the blind spots and the unconsciousness that someone on the receiving end of me doesn't know are there. Because that's where the oneness is. We're both blind and stupid sometimes.
Yes.
That's what we have in common.
Yes.
And judgmental and critical.
Absolutely.
And arrogant.
And I think all of this comes up because in this, I woke up, I'm on the spiritual path. It's perceived as like, you're done. Like, I have arrived. I am now enlightened. And it's like, that's how we talk about it. That's how the community talks about it. And so in that space of like, you're already there.
You've just missed it.
You already just put up a new blocker towards all of your stuff. Yeah. And so I think we need that initial kind of like, I guess, spunkiness. It is this like teenager where it's like, yeah, I am awake. Just so that you feel confident enough to go in this new direction and leave your whole life behind and change. Right. But then at the same time, just like really being real and honest. I mean, as the spiritual journey continues, that it does not end. It is forever, and it's not an instant thing. And it's very kind of sold to us, I think, as like spirituality like takes, catches fire in the mainstream, which is wonderful. Through yoga and meditation. That it's not an instant thing, fix all, that you can just do it overnight. You have an ayahuasca ceremony and you're awake. Yeah. And it's like
a pill, one meditation and you're done.
Right. It is constant, it is a journey, it is a practice, and we have so many things to look at in our unconscious to really address and be humble towards.
Right? This is I think the difference when you're on the spiritual path. or on the awakening path is that the witnesser starts to show up, and greater levels of awareness and accountability start showing up, and looking at your experiences in life as a classroom and the challenges that are being presented to you as an opportunity for growth, something to learn, somebody to show me my trigger or the truth. And that's, I think, where the spiritual path really accelerates, is when every person, every situation is seen as an opportunity for me to learn, heal, grow, or expand, or forgive, or awaken in some way that my soul is actually calling for.
Yes.
And it puts the victim on the bench, and it puts the students up front.
Ooh, and that one's so good. I love that you brought that up, because it reminds me of this time when, because you're like, you just said every moment is like an opportunity of learning. And at the beginning, like, I mean, there's been many times where I'm doing, like a meditation, and then I come out and I'm completely unconscious and triggered at someone, right?
In 30 seconds after the meditation.
In 30 seconds. And that is the moment, right? It's those moments like after the yoga class, after the meditation. It's those that are really where it's at. And those practices are just the thing to get you in the state, or to practice for those moments. But those are the moments.
Those are the moments. I call that delicious contrast. Ooh. Where it's like, oh, I'm in it. I'm awakened. I feel amazing. And then 30 seconds later, a minute later, all of a sudden I'm acting like a raging bitch.
Yes. Yes.
Judgmental and contracted, and really in that unconscious space where I'm triggered into that, and that's where I get to meet myself with gentleness.
Yes.
And bring the witnesser in to say, what is this really about? Because it's not about him. It's not about her. It's not about that person that just cut me off. What is this really about?
Yeah.
Where am I arguing with reality? Where have I just disconnected? Then I know I just disconnected, kind of like unplugging from the wall. I'm plugged into something fake, something that isn't really authentic. I'm going down the wrong path. And so I get to see those moments of delicious contrast where I'm like, oh, awaken and beautiful with this person, but with this other person, they get a totally different version of me. And when I was going through my awakening process after my marital liberation, I got to see that contrast, because I was starting to become more aware of how my heart was, how I spoke. And so when I started opening that up, and, oh, to this community, I'm this, oh, but you do that thing and you get this. And I got to see that where I was still having some things unhealed with my father, that I would be this way with my spiritual family or soul family, then I'd go be in front of my dad. And the parts that hadn't yet healed, closed off, judgment, impatient, and still cold. And I got to feel the disparity that says, wait a second, that's me.
Yes.
That's me. I'm me in both of those places. It's not, oh, well, that's because my dad brings this out of me.
Yeah.
This is how I'm responding. I'm a big girl now, and I get to choose how I respond, even if we aren't agreeing. I get to choose how to respond to somebody. And I got to see that delicious contrast. And in taking on my spiritual name, Anahata, Ananda, which means blissful heart, I chose a mantra that year that says, I choose to know my heart's fullest capacity to give and receive divine unconditional love in all situations.
Yes.
What a stupid mantra, Bridget. Because
you chose the one.
Like, let's go with the bar. I set the bar high.
Yes, you
I'm like,
did.
oh, I want to experience love,
Yes.
with the illusion that it would be sweet and amazing.
Yes.
When the reality is, what showed up for me that year
Oh.
was everything that isn't that.
Yes.
Which I was not expecting, because then when you're really doing the path, when you want to know compassion or you want to know patience, well, then anything that is in the way of that starts showing up for you. So I got to see and feel, because I directed the attention to my heart now. Here's the spiritual path. A stupid girl who does that. Who does that?
Yes.
And I did that. I said that with passion and purpose. And I said, okay, universe, I choose to know my heart's fullest capacity. And what that did was show me all of the pain in there,
Mm-hmm.
the judgments,
Mm-hmm.
the walls, the wounds that were keeping me from loving the biggest villain in my life, which at that time was my father.
Yeah.
And then he became my guru.
Mm.
Not because he was some spiritual guy, because remember, he was the atheist.
The ultimate challenge.
The ultimate challenger. Because then I was like, oh, he's actually the one that's giving me the opportunity to practice all of these things that I've been learning.
Yes.
And really deeply understand what is compassion, and let's take it out of the theory and put it into real classroom of how can I look my dad in the eye and say, I'm sorry for where I've hurt you. Oh God, that was so hard. And and instead of waiting for him to apologize and make amends, I was like, look, I'm the one that's on this spiritual path right now. It is my responsibility to ethically clean house in here and be accountable for the things that I've done that have harmed another. And my dad's probably been on the receiving end a lot of my judgment and anger and resentment from lots of reasons and lots of experiences. But I don't get to scoot away from that, because part of the spiritual path is being accountable.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter, well, you did it first. It's like, okay, I'm choosing to be accountable for where I left a dagger in your heart.
Mm.
Doesn't matter if you put one in mine first.
Yeah.
Because this is accountability that says, Dad, I'm sorry for where I hurt you. I'm sorry for where I judged you, or I said or did anything that, didn't leave your heart more whole, because you don't deserve that. And it was the courageous part of being on my spiritual path. Like, this was one of those choice points, like we said earlier, that is a deal changer of, instead of going to the way I usually did with my heart, I'm like, what if I actually just said I'm sorry?
Yes.
Without an expectation that he do anything.
Yes.
Without the need for, oh, and I'm sorry too, or it's okay, or I forgive you, or anything, not needing anything in return like that. It took me years to build up the courage to actually face my father and own my part in it. It doesn't matter whether it was 2% or 72% of my part. It's just, let me own my part of our dynamic that isn't healthy. And let me apologize for that. That was a big test and obstacle that I needed to overcome to really start to understand what my heart's fullest capacity was. And also forgive him without apologizing.
Yes. He doesn't need to change.
No, he doesn't need to. I don't need to say, hey, you did wrong, because now I'm back to the soapbox again.
Exactly. And then it doesn't heal anything.
No.
You're in that duality. You're in that separation.
Right. So what did you have to make amends with on your journey that was hard? Like, where did you have to face courageously a choice that was a game changer that accelerated your spiritual path?
Gosh, well, I mean, there's been quite a few. I mean, it kind of went into, like, funny enough, like, my spiritual path, it got coincided with career quite quickly. Yeah. And so that, one, humbly standing up for my, like, truth and my experiences, even if I would be completely ostracized by some of them, and everyone was saying no, so to, like, boldly, like, speak out to, like, the masses for, like, what was my experience, and then those moments where the distortions, right, those pieces, because you're saying, like, I take responsibility and I want to see everything. I am willing and open to seeing everything that is out of alignment and bringing love to that, like, and bringing healing to that. And so in that space, that was always kind of like there with me. And as I did that, seeing those ego aspects that were not clean, whether it was still wanting to achieve or be popular by being seen with these certain people that actually weren't in integrity, or like I wasn't aligned with, and me just kind of unconsciously going with that, and then realizing, oh my, what? I'm supposed to already know this. Like, I'm meant to, like, look at this and to look at the shadow and go, wow, I still had stuff I am not looking at, and to be, like, again, compassionate with ourselves, right? It's so much about that self-love space. And then to humbly go, okay, like, reorient and redirect and go, okay, how can I show up again? Like, to restart and go, how can I show up more kindly, more compassionately, more in integrity with myself, and, like, with what I am saying, like, to walk the walk, to talk the talk. So that's been a big part of what I've had to look at.
Right.
Yeah.
That piece right there when we're getting triggered, where the witnesser and the awareness comes in. It's like, wait a second, this is happening for me, not to me.
Yeah.
And instead of like having compassion, oh well, I just tripped again, oh well, but like having compassion.
Yeah.
And the next piece that you alluded to is, now let me not let me get myself off the hook.
Yes.
Let me now take accountability for how my choices
Yes.
just created this reality where I got triggered because I was attached to external validation,
Yeah.
or I was seeking being, in with a certain crowd of people,
Yeah.
or I was leading with my ego, or I was trying to force the timeline, or I wasn't being honest that this isn't a fit, like all of those things. And there's always a pearl in there.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a pearl. And when you're on the spiritual path, you get to see everything as a learning opportunity. And I remember actually even being here in Sedona, I'm doing the work, yeah, yada, yada, yada,
Yeah.
And it gets accelerated in the vortexes here. Boy, Sedona does not let you off the hook.
No, it does not.
And she is fierce, the
Yes.
shamaness that is where we live. And
Absolutely.
it's one of the reasons why we live here,
Yes.
too, is
because that's not enough. Like, we're looking at all the stuff, but like we just needed to light some fire under our butts,
Let's make it more.
Yes.
So in that, I remember like, okay, I'm getting better. That the momentum happens where like after doing this for a couple years,
Yeah.
you look back and you respond differently to a thing. You're like, damn, I used to get triggered about that. Yay.
Yes.
And you get to celebrate your victories.
Absolutely.
And be like, wow, I used to fight, I used to react, and
Yeah.
you get to see where you make progress.
Yes.
And I ran on this motorhome trip with my family. And ages 12 of us in one motorhome. Oh God, I know.
How do 12 people
I
fit
know.
in one?
I know. We had sleeping bags, and I know we all dive in, and we were going to 5 different states.
Yes.
The whole thing in the summer, hot as hell, in a motorhome, and
That sounds like a good reality TV show.
oh, I know exactly. Probably.
Are you ready for your spiritual path?
Yes, yeah. Just spend 2 weeks in a hot summer in Utah, like
Yes.
seeing like all of this. And you're literally dealing with your family's shit, and your shit is all in one hot box going through. It's just fully accelerated. And I'm like doing good. I'm like all calm going in. I last a couple days. Then I start accommodating everybody else at the expense of self.
Oh,
Okay, I'll drive the
yes.
night shift. Yeah. Oh, I'll be the first one up to do this. And I started what I call precarious consumption, also known as indulging in a lot of sugar.
Right.
I feel like I call it precarious consumption,
That's
where
so
it's like
good.
emotional eating, being
Yeah.
around all these triggers and all of this food that really doesn't nourish me, and going to those kinds of foods started to eke away at my stillness and my wholeness.
Yeah.
And not sleeping, eating precariously, getting triggered, stuffing it, not taking care of myself. By day 5, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm about to boil at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that my dad was like, we got to turn here, we got to go that, do this, and he was co-piloting, and I was like, and I'm trying to, all my tools, I'm like
Yes.
trying all
Yeah.
of my tools, and I just pulled the motorhome over, and I saw this, we were in Montana, we just saw this beautiful river, and I just pull the motorhome over, and I'm like, I need to chill right now, or I'm going to lose my shit,
Yeah.
and just go dragon lady and incinerate my whole family with one burst of eruptive fire, which, you can do. Anyway, I pulled over, and one of my tools was this, let me just pause and step back. And he's swearing, God damn it, we need to get there. And I was
Yes.
just like, oh, it's all cool. And jump in the water.
Nice.
Just 15 minutes. Everybody got out and stretched and got back in. And I'm like, awesome. But then I did the night shift driving again.
Oh,
And I didn't get
yes.
sleep. And then by the next day, when my dad was having a moment, I didn't have it within me to respond.
Yeah.
So full Dragon Lady meltdown. I don't care if
Wonderful.
you're my nephew. I'm going to breathe fire on you. I don't care if you end up as a little pile of ash. Not my problem, kid.
The imagery.
I know, right? But this was one of those great wake-up calls for me,
Yeah.
because I got to see the disparity to when I take care of myself, when I speak my truth, when I don't over accommodate everybody else at the expense of myself, when I don't engage in substances, when I don't get triggered by somebody else's emotional energy, all of those things that I was letting slide. I let this slide, that slide, that slide, and I knew better.
Yes.
And so all of those decisions to let those things that I knew better slide amplified it into, these are the 10 things that bring on Dragon Lady. And I loved that experience because it was such a contrast to, Miss Sedona enlightenment. And I'm like, oh no, I'm still very stuck. And in that experience, Bridget, I got to look humbly at what are the choices that created that. And that's where my lessons are. I got to take care of myself. I got to sleep. I got to have clear boundaries. I got to honor somebody else's emotional energy and let it stay there without triggering it.
Yes.
And know that prioritizing self-care and what I eat and downtime and stepping back is the best way I can love my family. Because when I don't, Dragon Lady comes out. And when I do, then I can be joyful and playful and rested and patient and compassionate. And I have more within me, the integrity to hold my center calm when somebody else is melting down and not get triggered by it.
Absolutely.
And so that was the greatest classroom ever, because I got to see all of those things that I wasn't doing that keeps me on my spiritual path. And so it helped devote me to those things and being a lot more non-negotiable with those in future, so that I can bring the best version of me to family and other places as well.
Oh, amazing.
I know that was a deep one.
Oh.
So, what are some misconceptions about the spiritual path? And then we're going to wrap it up for people.
Yeah. Well, one, that it's easy.
And it takes a minute.
Yes, yeah. It takes 5 seconds and it's easy. It's like a constant process, but the fulfillment and the reward and the deep meaning and the deep love for like yourself and that self relationship and that relationship. I mean, for me at this point, I am so in love with other people.
Yeah.
Like when I was little, I thought that all people were really, really mean and evil.
Scary, yeah.
And at this point, working with so many people, like I just have the utmost respect for all people, and I just love them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it is this thing where it isn't you woke up and you're done.
Yeah.
It's you looking at all of it, and it will continue to keep on coming up. Like you said, like if you didn't go for like truly grasp the pearl in your experience of your story,
gonna come up again.
it will just keep on relentlessly coming up. And I think because you can be in that space of the witness and you can observe that and you can see it at least 20-30 times before you actually take the pearl
or more
3
decades,
then finally you go, oh, okay, it's never gonna end. And then that shift happens, and then you can like forgive that trigger and you can love the other person. And that's the only way. Like it becomes the only choice.
Right.
And I think that that's really what it's about, is this like, it truly is the Christ-like energy of forgiveness, of love and compassion. And I know that all of those are like wonderful niceties that we've heard across the board for our whole lives, but it's truly, that's where I've arrived. Like that is the only way.
Isn't that interesting how we both come back around, not from a religious place, but from a spiritual place that actually acknowledges that Christ-like presence or Buddha-like presence or divine presence that is just, whether it's Mother Mary or an angel or whatever, is that compassionate, loving, forgiving presence. That's end up being a spiritual path, and that people find that their own version of that.
Yes.
Whether that's going to talk to the mountain, whether that is being by water, whether that's being in church, whether that is chanting, whether that's in meditation or yoga or whatever, that your spiritual path is going to be unique, and that you find that by listening to where you feel loved, true, whatever voice, whatever support feels you being witnessed in all of your fabulousness and all of your flaws, and it's still met with that beauty where you're not less than or unworthy or bad, but fabulous and beautiful and gorgeous and amazing. And so I love that when you're in that path, it gets easier.
It does get easier.
It gets easier.
It really does.
It gets so
When
much
you're in
easier.
that flow.
Right? And the dips are a lot less, and you come into this place of forgiveness faster.
Yes.
Which is really, really liberating. And then you get this authentic feeling, because this Anahata Ananda means blissful heart. And so not only is this a journey about love for me, but it's also the journey about the divine nectar of bliss that isn't fleeting. It's so fleeting and mysterious when you're in the trapped place of being unconscious, and that is accessible and delicious when you're awake. The amrita, the nectar of authentic happiness that is derived from inside and knowing self and being connected to whatever form of consciousness, light or truth or higher power that helps you see your own beauty.
Absolutely.
Yes, I know. This has been amazing.
Thank
I
you.
adore you.
I adore you.
Yes, isn't she fabulous, people? I know, right?
And I love that we've been friends for such a long time.
so
Like
long.
we're in this like community together.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's definite sister.
Definitely.
And this is what happens is that in the spiritual path, you start to find those people that you really resonate with. And that doesn't mean you leave behind everybody, because then you can bring a better version of yourself to support friends and family wherever they are. You're not sitting at the Thanksgiving table judging them. But now I'm at like whatever family gathering or holiday event, just like do your thing. Doesn't matter what you put in your body, doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth. I love you where you are. And when I'm forgetting that, then I know I've just disconnected from consciousness. You know, like there's the classroom again.
Yes.
So tell everybody where they can find your fabulousness.
Yeah. So you can find me primarily on YouTube, and you can just search my name, Bridget Nielsen, work on the spelling. I'm sure it's here. And then you can find me on my website, which is bridgetnielsen.com, on all the different social media platforms. And I have a free gift for you guys today, my high vibrational diet guide. So it's a recipe book guide that you can download and have for yourself so that it can assist you on your path to raise your vibration.
Yes. Her YouTube channel is phenomenal. You've
Thank
got tons and tons of great content for free. So that's a free gift that's already up there that you can access right now. We'll make sure to have the link in the show notes.
Awesome.
Definitely. And it's a wonderful gift. You are all about the nutrition. You and I have both
love it.
dove into superfoods and vibrant health, and how that really does help sustain vitality
And not bring out Dragon Lady.
Yeah, gosh.
It's a very important piece of it.
Right? Because it does help us to calm the nervous system, and actually food that nourishes us at a soul level but takes care of our temple that holds our light.
Indeed.
So she's all about the nutrition and has some phenomenal, so that recipe book is amazing.
Thank you.
Okay? I'm going for the free gift myself. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
It's been such an honor.
It's so great. And it's so fun seeing how much you've grown over the years.
Yeah,
Like,
you too.
to see you on your path, and you're just doing such amazing work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So on that note, you can find me at shamangelichealing.com, and I have a free gift for you today. So you're getting all kinds of great gifts today. And what I want to share with you is I'm just going to give it to you for free, is a meditation course that just kind of is sharing with you my tips to kind of help you go deeper into that place of stillness, so that you can listen to your spirit, your soul, your higher truth, and have more of an opportunity to deepen into that listening and that communal nature of you and your spirituality, whatever that looks like for you. And meditation is one of many tools to get there. So I'm just going to give you my meditation course. And also $150 off the Empowerment and Awakening weekend with me here in Sedona. So sign up for those free gifts. And the Empowerment and Awakening weekend is 3.5 days packed with amazing content that I just love to share with people. Consciousness, chakra balancing, spiritual nutrition, conscious relationships, clear boundaries, manifestation techniques. It's like my juju packed into 3.5 days here in breathtaking sacred Sedona. So check that out. Also, please, if you loved this conversation, please share it, like it, send it to a friend that you really think might benefit from what we shared here and the authentic stories. Maybe it would landed with you, or maybe it lands with somebody that is going through their dark night or on their spiritual path and struggling in any way. And so please like it, share it, and spread the word.
Yes.
Give us some amazing reviews. This is how we get the word out, because we're doing our mission here, and we just want it to land in those places, in the heart space of those people that are really hungry for this information.
Yes.
So thank you to my
you.
sister. Isn't she fabulous? And for
Angel woman.
everything that you're doing.
Yes.
Most appreciated for your truths and your transparency today and your
Same.
light.
I love seeing you take this stage. It's
Yes, yes. So, beautiful angels, may you be walking with the support of each of us. Know that if you're still listening and if you're still watching this, you are not alone, and we're here to support you in any way we can. There's lots of resources between the two of us to help you on your spiritual path, navigating the obstacles and receiving all the benefits. So have a beautiful, phenomenal day, and thank you so much for tuning in.